Imagine walking into a university lecture hall ready to study, only to realize that someone, is making it physically impossible to concentrate. And no, it's not loud chatter or a phone ringing. It's the smell, the kind of smell that hits you like a wall and refuses to let go. This was the daily nightmare for staff and students at Erasmus University in Rotterdam back in the early 2000s. Meet Teunis Tenbrook, a philosophy student whose feet were so notoriously smelly that the university actually banned him from attending classes. Yes, you heard that right. He was expelled, not for cheating, not for fighting, but for having feet so pungent they allegedly made studying impossible. People couldn't focus. Lectures became unbearable. Even the library, the supposed sanctuary of quiet, became off-limits because of the odor. But here's the kicker. This isn't a joke or some urban legend. A 10-year legal battle followed, challenging one of the weirdest bans in university history. And the reason it got so messy? The law had to decide whether stinky feet were really enough to kick someone out of school. And that's just the beginning, because what happens next? Well, that court ruling would leave everyone shaking their heads and laughing at just how absurd things got. The situation didn't stay quiet for long. Imagine trying to study philosophy, dive into dense texts, or even take a simple exam while being hit by a smell so strong it made your eyes water. Staff tried politely asking Teunis to take care of the problem, suggesting showers, socks, or even shoes that could help contain the odor. Some students got creative, spraying body sprays or plugging their noses just to survive a lecture, but Teunis didn't budge. According to reports, he simply ignored complaints, insisting that his right to study shouldn't be infringed by the reactions of others. His irrelevant attitude only made things worse. The stench reportedly traveled through floors, affecting entire sections of the university. It became a legendary issue. Some students even said the library's upper floors weren't safe from it. Rumors swirled. Was he refusing on purpose to provoke others, or was it a medical issue he couldn't control? The university tried limits, offered help, and still, nothing changed. Eventually, it escalated into a full ban. Teunis was told, "Stay out, or you can't continue your studies." And just when everyone thought it couldn't get any more bizarre, the legal battle began. A battle that would drag on for a decade, challenging the very idea of what counts as a disruption at a university. The courtroom became the stage for one of the strangest legal battles in recent history. 10 years of hearings, appeals, and arguments unfolded over foot odor. Judges, lawyers, and university officials had to consider an unprecedented question. Can a student be banned simply because of how their feet smell? The university argued that staff and students were being physically and mentally affected. Concentration was impossible in some classrooms, the library became unbearable, and complaints were piling up. But Teunis's defense was simple and bold. A smell, no matter how strong, should not stop someone from pursuing their education. In a ruling that left many shaking their heads, the judge sided with Teunis. Foot odor, the court decided, did not meet the threshold to justify a university ban. Professors and students were told, essentially, to hold their noses and bear it. The verdict didn't just allow him back into the university. It made headlines worldwide, sparking debates about personal rights, hygiene, and the limits of academic regulation. Some saw it as a victory for individual freedom, others as a strange quirk of law run amok. But one thing was clear: Teunis Tenbrook had proven that even the strangest barriers could be challenged, and won. Returning to campus, Teunis stepped back into classrooms that had once seemed impossible to enter. Students whispered, staff stared, and some couldn't hide their disbelief. But rather than retreating, he faced it head-on. He continued his philosophy studies, attending lectures and sitting in the same library where he had once been banned. The reactions were mixed. Some classmates still cringed at the smell, while others found the whole saga oddly inspiring. A man taking on an institution over something as bizarre as foot odor and winning. Social media caught wind of the story, and suddenly, Teunis became an unlikely symbol of perseverance, stubbornness, and the sheer unpredictability of life. Interestingly, this strange ordeal sparked wider conversations about university policies. Questions arose: how far can institutions go in regulating behavior? At what point does personal freedom outweigh collective discomfort? And perhaps most importantly, how should society handle issues that don't fit neatly into rules, like the infamous Smelly feet case? The campus itself became a kind of testing ground for tolerance. While some students kept their distance, others admired his determination, even jokingly calling him a legend of the library. Teunis's story was no longer just about odor. It was about challenging authority, standing your ground, and questioning what truly matters in education. The legal battle itself had dragged on for nearly a decade, and by the time the court finally ruled in Teunis's favor, it had become a landmark case in Dutch education law. Judges made it clear a student cannot be banned simply because others find personal hygiene unpleasant. It wasn't just a victory for Teunis, it was a statement about fairness, personal rights, and the limits of institutional authority. News outlets around the world picked up the story. Headlines ranged from bewildered to bemused. Smelly feet student wins court case, and university forced to readmit odorous student. Online forums erupted with debates. Some argued that the ruling encouraged stubbornness or poor hygiene, while others celebrated it as a triumph of justice over arbitrary rules. But the case also forced universities everywhere to reconsider their policies. Staff began implementing guidelines for dealing with disruptive behavior in a way that balanced individual rights with collective comfort. Some schools even created advisory programs for students with medical or hygiene-related issues, recognizing that extreme cases could involve more than just laziness or stubbornness. They could hint at underlying health concerns. By the end of it all, Teunis's story wasn't just a quirky anecdote about smelly feet. It became a cautionary tale, a humorous legend, and a symbol of perseverance. It reminded students, staff, and courts alike that sometimes the strangest battles teach the most important lessons about fairness, patience, and tolerance. The social reaction to Teunis's victory was as colorful as the story itself. Memes popped up online depicting libraries filled with gas masks, students holding their noses, and philosophers triumphantly waving socks in the air. Forums debated whether this was a lesson in tolerance or just proof that some people take stubborn to a legendary level. Friends, classmates, and even strangers weighed in. Some were amazed at the sheer determination it took to fight a 10-year legal battle over something as bizarre as foot odor. Others couldn't help laughing at the absurdity of the situation. After all, who imagines a student banned from university because of smelly feet? Yet beneath the humor, there was a deeper lesson. Teunis's story highlighted the importance of standing up for one's rights, even in the face of ridicule or disbelief. It also forced institutions to reflect on fairness, making policies more humane and considerate of individual circumstances. What started as a smelly nuisance ended up reshaping how universities approach discipline, inclusivity, and personal freedom. And perhaps the strangest part? Even years later, people still talk about it. In academic circles, legal studies, and casual conversations, the tale of Teunis Tenbrook serves as a reminder that sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and persistence pays off in the most unexpected ways. In the end, Teunis Tenbrook didn't just win a legal battle. He became a symbol of persistence, absurdity, and the quirks of human life. Imagine walking into a library surrounded by students holding their noses, yet knowing that one person's determination changed the rules for everyone. The story leaves us with a question that's as strange as it is compelling. How far would you go to defend your right to be yourself, even when the world finds it ridiculous? Would you fight 10 years for something as odd as smelly feet, or would you quietly accept the judgment and move on? For some, this is just a funny anecdote. For others, it's a lesson in resilience and legal rights. And for anyone who's ever felt judged for something they can't easily change, Teunis's victory offers a mix of hope, laughter, and disbelief. So next time you think a small problem seems impossible, remember the student who stood his ground and forced an entire university to hold their noses and bear it. His story is bizarre, hilarious, and ultimately unforgettable, a perfect example of how truth can be stranger than fiction. Before we go, take a moment to think about the reactions this story sparks. Some find it hilarious, others shocking, and a few might even relate. It's a reminder that human experiences can be strange, frustrating, and sometimes completely absurd, but they're also what make life memorable. Stories like Teunis Tenbrook's aren't just about smelly feet or university rules. They're about persistence, individuality, and challenging norms. They push us to question, how would we react in a situation that seems utterly ridiculous? And more importantly, how far would we go to defend our rights, even when the odds are stacked against us? If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned, because there are countless more stories out there, bizarre, unbelievable, and fascinating, just waiting to be uncovered. You never know what strange victory might be hiding behind the next headline.